This 2005 Pontiac GTO needs a new radiator, so we're going to replace that today. We're going to start by removing the components that are in our way when we go to move this radiator out of the way to slide it up out of the car, and we're going to start with this intake tube. Let's start removing this tube. Only need to loosen it up just a little bit, and on this car it's got a custom air filter, which means there's a little less to take apart here. So there's that. This connection, the mass airflow sensor connector, is underneath here. There we are. While working on this, you're going to be moving a lot of metal parts around the positive side of this battery. I would recommend disconnecting it, and even better is to just remove the battery entirely. It gives you a little more space to work, and you won't have to worry about arcing to this positive post. The next thing in our way are these radiator hoses, which are connected to the radiator anyways. Alright, good, we've moved it out of the way. Now it should be a little easier to slide down. Yep, super easy. You start out here and you just slide it out of the way and let it go. This water outlet goes a little bit further down this pipe, about 1.5 inches, so make sure you get it all the way down. You may be able to see in the camera this slight bulge here. That's the lip that holds this on. Once that hose clamp is out of the way, you might be able to slide this off, but a lot of times the rubber fuses to the oxidized metal beneath it, and it's a real pain to get off by hand. Sometimes if you wiggle it back and forth enough, it gives up and slides off little by little. If you're not worried about putting this hose back on, you can use a pair of grips like this and twist it back and forth. There we go, now it's broken loose. Alright, I don't encounter many hose clamps like this. It is actually almost stapled into the hose. We will disconnect these lines. These are return lines for the reservoir. These can be taken off the fan shroud and moved out of the way. The biggest thing between you and the radiator right now is this fan shroud. We're going to disconnect it at the source, not at one of the fan connectors. Down in here there's a clip. You'll have to pull back on that clip to unlock it. Pull back on that clip and slide it up just a little bit. Once it's unlocked and slid up, the clip will hold this in place, and then you go to the clip on the other side, do the same thing, and now that it's past both clips, you can start pulling up on it, but it won't come out all the way. Now it's out of its base mount. We can pull up a bit, but this transmission line is in the way. You could pull these transmission lines off, but I'll show you how to get this off without pulling those out. If it slides up and gets caught, just move it back a little, and then get the far clip out of the way and push it to the side, and now it's free from both sides. A little more wiggling and the whole thing comes out. Just like with the coolant, you're going to want a drain pan that'll catch the fluid that comes out when you disconnect these lines. The transmission fluid drains out into the pan. And not a whole lot if we're careful. If you keep this hose up high, all the transmission fluid that's in the transmission will stay in there. These clips are just hooks on the front and the back, and you can remove them by pushing down and then inwards with a flathead screwdriver or a trim removal tool like this one. There's one side. There's the other side somehow. Don't know how that happened, but sure, why not? Once it's unhooked, it'll lift up pretty well. And then the other side is tricky. But as soon as you push it in, it seems to spring on out. So that seems to be the way to do it. All right, that is still attached to the condenser. There are 4 of these clamp bolts that are going to have to come out. At this point, we're going to have to take the front bumper off. There are bolts down in the bottom into a gap where my arms just don't fit in there, so this is going to be the only way for me. You might be able to reach down in there, but I can't, so the bumper's coming off. Always compare the old and new parts to make sure you got the part for the right vehicle. Make sure nothing's going to be in your way when you install the new radiator. Still a few things we need to do with this radiator. Need to drain it out. Oh, there was a lot in there still. Need to pull the hose clamps off the hoses. These, I've never seen these things sold new. Make sure you transfer all the necessary hardware to the new radiator. Make sure you put all these brackets in by hand to make sure that they go down all the way. The bottom ones have retaining clips and the top ones just slide in. There's only one spot each of these will reach. And this one with the extra length to it goes up to the top. Make sure you don't cross thread it. These freshly painted radiator retainers are going in. Plug the radiator fan back in. Now onto the radiator hoses. This hose clamp had a hook on it, but it was damaged. So I cut it right off of here so we can reuse this clamp. Whenever you get radiator hoses, make sure you cut off these tags here that the retailers hang them with. I also like to take the stickers off because it looks better, and if you try to take them off later after they've gotten hot, they're really nasty and don't want to come off. Squeeze this clamp onto the lower side, far enough up that you can let go of it and it's not going to block here. And then this clamp will go on the top side. Make sure the hose is backed all the way to that first pipe lip. Make sure you put the clamp on about halfway between the front lip and the back lip. Make sure the clamp is out of the way again. Push the radiator hose on. There's usually a little stop on here. You'll get a little plastic tab on here if you've got a plastic tank, and then you push it all the way on until it meets that. This is the same as the screw type clamps. You just want to get it in the middle, which is thinner so it doesn't come off. All right, that radiator hose is in place and ready to go. The cap that was on the old radiator didn't look too bad, but I decided to get a new one just as a safety precaution. In order to install one of these, you just lift up on the tab, put it on like a normal cap, tighten, and then close that lever. Now this radiator hose has 2 different sizes on it, which means 2 different size hose clamps. In this case, the bigger side goes up top. Be careful with these. They've got a lot of spring tension when you open them up all the way, and if they slip out of here, they're gonna go flying. With that bottom clamp, it's best to either go at it from the bottom or have that transmission line out of the way. At the end, you obviously have to get the air out of the system, but don't forget that you also lost a little bit of transmission fluid, so check that level as well. Deep pan only, check in cart, engine idling, vehicle level. If you're changing that radiator because your engine overheated, make sure you change the oil as well, because the oil will lose its lubricating qualities if it gets cooked. Also, dispose of all your old fluids properly, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.